welcome back, Star Wars fans, to Coruscant Radio Underground. I'm Andrew. I'm here with Marisha.
Hello.
Oh, look, we got too many devices turned on here. There we go. No more echo.
Only one of you.
Only one
It's a
me.
shame.
I don't think that's probably most people's opinion.
It would be weird if there was more than one of you.
Yeah, it'd be like Ball on Stargate.
Yeah, it's just
There's like a whole bunch of clones wandering around,
or the
or
time there were
Cam,
two Rikers
or the
on
time there were a whole bunch of Cams.
yes, or the whole time there was a whole bunch of Kangs. That was unsettling too.
We're not done with that yet.
It's true. True. So I guess it's okay. There's only one of you.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else. I don't think anybody else in the network is live right now. I think Sarlacc Digest guys are going to be live later, but they're
Okay.
way out on the West Coast, so
hmm
they always go live pretty late
Yep.
for us.
For us, right?
Um, so we're going to talk about it's episode 2 of season 3 of The Mandalorian, which is
Okay.
chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore. And I'm gonna be honest, like there was part of me, given the way they've kind of been doing these stories,
hmm
that was kind of concerned that we were gonna wait
Till the
like till the
season
end of the
finale.
season to actually go to the mines.
Yeah.
Like I kind of thought the whole thing was gonna be the buildup of him getting to the mines. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad we went forward with the storytelling instead of
hmm
doing a whole bunch of stuff to get there.
Like you can only do the quest that we're gonna finally get to in episode 8 so many times before it's like, all right, let's shake
Yeah.
things up a
I
little
mean,
bit.
I like the quest. I mean, I would be absolutely fine with a Star Wars show that was more of an adventure of the week sort of thing. Um, but that's not what this is. And sometimes it gets, I don't feel like episodes are often just throwaway, but
hmm
like sometimes it takes a while to get some payoff.
Right.
This show's less guilty of that than some of the others.
Yeah. But now that being said, when we've gotten payoff in this show, it's been worth all the dragging things out that we've done.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I feel like that's mostly been the case. I think Boba Fett was probably the one with the least payoff.
hmm
Um, this show always does a good job of payoff. Despite my complaints about Andor, it did really good with payoff.
hmm
So, I'm gonna have to take the arms off my chair or
Yeah, I
something.
keep
Or,
running into me. Andrew's staying away from me because I got strep throat. So he's
I
staying on
mean,
his side of the table.
I'm the only one in the house so far without strep throat,
Yeah,
so it's just a
it's just a matter of
just a
time.
matter of time. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um, so just overall, what are you thinking about the show?
I'm really enjoying it. I'm always happy to see more Bo Katan.
Yep. You know, that is one of the best animation to live action
Oh,
uh
absolutely.
translations that I can think
Yeah,
of.
actually I was talking about that deer and when we were watching the episode. It was she got when she got out of her starfighter and she puts that helmet on. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, that is impressive. It's impressive how well it translated. It doesn't, things don't always translate from live action to animation or the other direction. Some things just really speak better in their original medium, but um she looks phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. And she's a really good character. I'm glad we're seeing more of her.
hmm
We got some big things. Like she might be there's still the waters are still a little muddy on the creed and the religion of Mandalore and exactly who's right or if anybody's really right, if everybody's kind of taken things too far one way or the other and they've all kind of strayed from
hmm
the path of the Mandalore. Um that's kind of my suspicion is that nobody's exactly walking
hmm
the path of the original Mandalore.
So I was, because I was listening to when he starts walking in the water, he starts, reciting the creed. And it sounds like his Death Watch sect has added a lot of things to
Yeah, absolutely. And
religion.
when we talk about religion, that's sort of what we expect, right?
Yes, adding things to the original dogma. I mean, that's what people love to
Yeah, I
do.
think that's real. I think that's very, very accurate to the way, particularly, I mean, when we look at, there's a lot of, I think it's mostly getting compared to the Jews in
Hmm.
exile.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, a dysphoria like that,
yeah, well, and we even
like
have
the whole
lines
woman.
from, we have text from Exodus,
Hmm.
on an artifact, and they're definitely drawing
Hmm.
connections to Israel.
Yeah.
But there's also some Christian undertones here as well,
Hmm.
which is, which flows.
Well,
It's
which
a
makes sense.
natural flow from one to the other.
I mean,
So,
as far as Judaism is concerned, we're just I mean, originated as a sect of Judaism.
right,
So it's. I mean, even baptism was originally not a Christian thing. That was something that that was a Jewish symbol
right.
before it was
Yeah, no, when
co-opted
we,
as the Christian symbol.
right. Hey, Ro, glad to see you in the chat.
How's it going?
Um, but yeah, lots and lots of religious undertones.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really interested to see where they're going with that. That's, I'm a lore person.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a lore over anything person, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
that's why you
feel
like talking.
that's why I like Tolkien, or maybe Tolkien is why I like lore. It's one way or the other, but
Yeah.
it's, I feel like the more lore I have, the more I can immerse myself in a world,
Hmm.
rather than just story and
And that's
random.
always been a good thing about Star Wars,
Star Wars has always been lore heavy.
at least since I was a kid, a teenager when the prequels were coming out. I mean, there was just lore coming out of the woodwork. There were all
Right.
the visual guides and all the
Well,
things.
not just that. I mean, you had over a decade, or you had roughly a decade of book material that had
Hmm.
expanded the lore
Hmm.
significantly, like way, way beyond.
Hmm.
I would say that we're still probably not caught up with lore wise with where we were when we cut off Legends.
Yeah.
Um, the EU had, I mean, it had gotten to the point where you couldn't even keep up. You couldn't read it all.
Yeah.
You had the Dark Horse comics, you had tons and tons of novels.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. It was a.
but Ro liked it, which is good to see. I'm glad you liked this one. I understand your feelings about the last one. I liked some of the stuff. There was enough stuff in the first one for me to really like, but I certainly understand.
It wasn't
Uh,
everybody's jam.
yeah, and it was, and that's actually, I have one small complaint with this episode,
Hmm.
and it actually stems from the way it rolls from the first one to this one.
Okay.
It feels like one episode that they went, just chop it in half there and release it in two separate pieces.
Yeah.
I felt like the trip to Tatooine to see Pelimoto should have occurred in the first episode,
Hmm.
or that was a transition point from the first to the second. And it's,
Hmm.
um, that scene felt like it belonged in the wrong episode.
Yeah. I think this would have done better if they would have dropped two episodes, the first two episodes at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the thing. They're not going to want to do that when they only have 8 episodes.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, I agree completely that this was one episode that we got across 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But that's my biggest complaint with the season so far. I don't
Hmm.
mind the setup, but while we continued that for the first, what, 5 minutes,
Hmm.
it was cool. It's always cool to see Tatooine. It was cool to see that even Tatooine is maybe not coming up as fast as Navarro, but like
Hmm.
there's stuff going on Tatooine.
Hmm. Banta Eve.
Boonta Eve.
I
Bantha Eve is a different celebration.
actually said Banta, but you're right. That's not even a thing.
Bantha Eve.
I didn't say the. I said Banta. Just
Bantha.
a T and no T.
Bantha Eve is, That's where you sacrifice the largest bantha in the herd and do something with them. I don't know.
All right. We heard it here first, folks.
But you know, it just the seriousness of this episode with that first scene, uh it was in it. If it had been in the middle of the episode, it'd have screwed it all up. The fact that it's at the beginning, you have the moment, it's all pre-credit, it's all pre-title sequence. So,
Right.
you know, it's almost like a cold open.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it is what it is. It just felt out of place.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good one.
Now, character, as far as character choices, you notice Pelly didn't replay the tooth that she got knocked out in Book of Boba Fett. She didn't get it replaced. She's still missing a tooth, and that was a nice character choice.
Yeah, that would cost money.
She could get the Jawas to find her a tooth.
It's true.
I really liked the character. I felt she was out of place in this episode, but like I said, you know, it was at least pre-title sequence, so I'll forgive it. But I still think this was 2 episodes cut in half. Yeah, I mean, 1 episode cut in half.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. So what about you? What's your favorite thing here?
So, well, I mean, I'm not gonna go to my favorite thing because it's at the very end. We'll get there. Okay. I will say that I watched this last night. I had every intention of getting on here and doing an immediate reaction after I watched it at 2:00 this morning. But I think, as previously mentioned, I'm the only one in the house not sick, and I'm not totally sure that I'm totally not sick. But I wasn't. By the time it was over, it was, I'm going to do this, but I meant for it to be not spoiler. And by the end of this episode, I was just sitting on the sofa in the middle of the night by myself, grinning from ear to ear like an idiot, because that was one of the coolest things like we could have done in this episode, or at all.
Yeah. And they kind of like, by the time it got there, I wasn't surprised to see it. I think they kind of did a good job dropping hints that that's where the story was going.
Yeah. It wasn't a total shock, but it was still like, oh my God, they actually did it.
Yeah. All right. So since you don't want to tell us what your favorite,
well, I kind of want to go through the episode, and we'll talk about. I mean, obviously, this is spoiler territory, y'all. So just we're gonna get to the mythosaur, but I think the mythosaur is like the big moment, one of the big moments in this series so far. Yeah, like the fact that like we're getting into some pretty intense.
I mean, I don't know. The season finale was Luke Skywalker for the last.
Yeah, but it depends on like big as far as what part of the story. Like, yeah, obviously Luke showing up is just a huge Star Wars moment. But for the Mandalorian story, which is what they're telling here, this is the biggest moment. This is the heralding of a new age of Mandalore. Yeah. So this is a pretty cool moment. I did think I don't think we had confirmation before, because we were kind of, I think we were led a little bit astray at the beginning of the show. Like the Mandalorians or the Death Watches out there, and they're saving children from separatists at this point, and they're, you know, bringing them into the cult, bringing them into the family. Right. But we kind of like had this idea that it was just children from anywhere. That weren't necessarily Mandalorians, but that you become Mandalorian by being inducted. And there might be some of that. There probably is some of that. Yeah. But he's not just from nowhere. Like, we get confirmation in this that he's from Concordia, the moon of Mandalore.
Okay, I assumed that that's where he was raised.
Maybe, but that is not. He says that he was from Concordia.
Okay.
So we could, I mean, there's a lot of planets in Mandalorian space that might have just been me misunderstanding it. I watched it twice, and that's what I took from it. But you're right; it could just be that that's where he was raised. But I kind of got the impression that they were largely raised. He was largely raised on the run.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It would beg a question though. How did he not? If he were raised on Concordia, how would he not know about Bo-Katan? How would you kind of get the impression she's kind of a big deal up in
I
there?
mean, it depends on how old. I don't know if they told us how old he was when he was rescued. And
I mean that we saw it like
Bo
probably like
Katan's also
7.
more of an outsider for a lot of that.
That's true. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting if they tell us if he was if he how Concordia falls into, if this is where he was born or if this is where he was taken um after he was rescued.
Yeah. What did you think about the new creatures on Mandalore?
They were they were something that alien looked like the aliens from Lost in Space.
Yeah, I was actually talking about the Alamites,
Yeah,
which is like
they
a
were
more
horrible.
kind of a prehistoric or a less developed society that had lived alongside the Mandalorians. And we're not really told what the relationship between the people of Mandalore and the Alamites were. They look a lot like Morlocks.
Star
Um,
Trek. Where the Morlocks from?
um, totally blanking. The
Not Star Wars. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible, Joker, that he was just taken to Concordia. I would like for them to flesh some of that out, but
Mhm.
they've left that kind of unclear, and I think they muddied the water on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but the Alamites, I think I'm saying that right, were there's a brand new creature. Like we've never as far as I can tell, they don't exist in Star Wars lore anywhere. It's a
Hmm.
brand new
Okay.
creature. Um, Now, the one that they didn't tell us anything about is the one you're talking about. The whatever the creature living in that's operating multiple mechs. Yeah, it looks like the droid from Lost in Space a lot
Hmm.
from the new Lost in Space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and he was interesting though. He was a. I wonder if they're going to tell us what he was after. It's like he was
yeah,
clearly like draining some blood or
yeah. No,
something.
it's going to be interesting. I don't know if they're going to explain that to us or not. It was weird. I mean, it's obviously, it's a robot, but it appears to be some sort of also sentient
Yeah.
biological being. So
Yeah, he was an interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
I mean, yeah, he does. But if Mando didn't talk to Grogu, there wouldn't be a whole lot of talking in this. It's talk to Grogu or talk to himself.
Right.
Mm.
That would be kind of weird. I mean, and that's what you do with kids, especially little ones. You know, you talk to them about the things that you think are important.
Yeah,
Um, you that's and especially, he's very conscientiously sharing, what's important about life with his baby. And that's,
yeah.
if your kids are with you all the time, that's what you do with your
What did
life.
you think about the way that Mandalore or what's left of it translated from um, animation to live action?
I mean, I thought it looked pretty cool. It was definitely believable as a advanced, beautiful society in ruins. It really it was really convincing, because we haven't seen Mandalore post um bombardment, and
Yeah.
so it was a really
Well,
it
we
was
got
it was kind of
some.
haunting.
Yeah, it was. We got some nice shots of the ruins, but we also got some really nice when they first kind of break the clouds.
Mhm.
break through the storm when they're landing, you get
Mhm.
some really cool kind of wide shots
Mhm.
of the landscape. Which they lived in domed cities because they had ruined their own planet
Right.
after years of war. So the whole it's not like the planet was entirely
Pristine.
livable
Right.
um, prior. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go with kind of like reshaping. Obviously, we're mostly concerned with the reshaping of Mandalorian culture,
Mhm.
but has the way what has happened to Mandalore, is it possible that we see a resurgence of the planet itself?
Like
Um,
as in this original.
well, that the a lot like a lot like controlled burns.
Mhm.
You burn. And this is different than burning. I mean, they glassed the planet,
Mhm.
but that's burning creates new life.
Mhm.
That's um when you do controlled burns or
Mhm.
even wildfires. I mean, that's what wildfires did for years. And I mean,
Mhm.
doing that artificially goes all the way back, thousands of years. Um, but I mean, even like Kubla Khan wrote the first book
Mhm.
on doing controlled burns
Yeah.
for the health of wildlife and plant life
Mhm.
and all that. So I'm curious to see how much, and I do think we see indications that the planet is coming back to life
Mhm.
by the fact that the mythosaur is there.
Yeah.
Um, See, I'm seeing this a lot, and yes, it was dark, but I don't recall but a couple of shots where I couldn't make out all the detail.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as dark as some things we've been watching lately. Like, we just turned off the overhead lights and it was fine. We've watched a few things lately
Well,
where
yeah, but we only
literally,
had to turn off the overhead lights because of the sun glaring through. I mean, it was just to get the light low enough
yeah, yeah.
because our living room is not good for watching TV in the daytime.
No, but I was just saying, there are a few things that we've watched lately where we literally couldn't see what was
Oh
happening.
yeah,
Movies.
absolutely. And I'm usually pretty quick to complain about that, but I
Hmm.
never noticed any points that I didn't feel like they were dark, really dark on purpose.
Hmm.
The scene where she's
Willow, I noticed, had a lot of
Willow
that
was
going on.
terrible. Willow, it was just like watching mud.
It was really hard to see a lot of it.
Yeah,
So there were definitely a few moments where it's like, okay, wait, what's going on? But it didn't last long enough, I guess, to really bother me much.
yeah. I think there were a couple of scenes that were intentionally dark to kind of mask everything that was happening. As far as like when she's coming up from pulling Den off the bottom
Hmm.
of the pool there, it's I think it was all meant to so that you just get that moment of visibility of seeing this one or
Yeah.
parts of this one thing because they
Right.
didn't want to reveal the whole thing yet.
Right.
Um, but I thought Mandalore looked phenomenal. I
Yeah.
thought it looked really, really good. I thought the ruins looked great, but I loved the wide shots of the land, the landscape
Yeah. The
and the
planet was
ruined
very
dome
cool
city,
looking.
and
Hmm.
I thought they did a good job with all that.
Yeah. I think it'll be really interesting to see because now the critters, don't remember what they
The
were.
Alamites or
Alamites, yeah.
Alamates?
Um, she said they used to live on the surface, but now they're living in the city. So that does beg the question of why. What exactly is it? Just because the cities are now
Well, I
uninhabited?
think it's just because they can live there. I think um, we don't really know what they are. I mean, they're going to be a more primitive species,
Hmm.
possibly the original inhabitants of
Hmm.
Mandalore. Kind of like Mandalore's version of the Tuscans.
Yeah.
Uh,
Rachel Morrison. Who is she? What, the DP, or that's not a name I recognize. Or said he liked Rachel Morrison's work on this. Oh, cinematographer. Yeah.
yeah,
Um. Yeah, I agree. Um. The cinematics were really really pretty for this. Which is a really nice thing to see in Star Wars. That's something that Star Wars has classically been really good about. Oh, the director. Okay. Yeah. Um, and I really appreciate whenever episodes have story to tell and they're also pretty. It's a really nice balance for me. Um, in entertainment, whenever I can have my cake and eat it too. I
Yeah.
like to have my cake and eat it too.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really been on a lot today, so I haven't seen any complaining about Bo-Katan. I'm not surprised that it exists, but I thought she was just absolutely badass in this. Like she
Mm-hmm.
was largely one of my favorite things about this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and so I had to laugh. So she sees that ship show up, and like she just get the impression she's ready to go out there and shoot him. So we just leave her alone.
Right.
We're gonna solve this problem once and for all.
She's angry. She's angry and very bitter.
And she is not happy to see him show up. But then whenever he's not there, she goes, "Oh, well, where is he? Let's go find him." It's like, all right,
Yeah.
that tracks. That was pretty good.
Yeah, no, and I mean her and Din Djarin, they work they're playing off of each other well. I'm enjoying that. I'm also enjoying this. She's angry. She doesn't want to see him. He's got too much hope
Right.
still for her taste right now.
Yep. Yep. And she's just, and that's the thing about bitter people, is they just sort of want to be left to be bitter in peace.
I mean, she's still sitting in her castle.
It's just with them on her couch. Her. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's anybody else in her castle except
No,
for
and she's
Troy.
her in her castle. Yeah, and her couch, which it looks like she's been sleeping there by the blankets and things,
Yeah.
piled up next to her. Um, yeah, I mean she's given up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's going to play into the religious imagery. So I think the best part of this episode, other than the mythosaur, the mythosaur is just awesome. Even though it's nothing, it's just we see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool indication of where we're going.
And I think this is an accurate assessment too. She is like, this is like what she was born to do.
Oh no, yeah, she's fantastic.
Like she shows up and just sort of,
no, she could 100%
captures. I mean,
she can 100% carry this show. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I wouldn't be devastated if we get a Bo-Katan show at some point.
I don't think you're going to have to. I think from here on out, I think she is a major player in this one.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. So whenever she picked the Darksaber up and fought the creepy robot guy off, I really thought that she was going to keep it.
Yeah, but for why? Like, she knows that nobody's going to follow her now. Like,
yeah.
The question is why hasn't she challenged Din Djarin for it?
Right.
That's kind of the real question here. She's had at least two opportunities, maybe more, to challenge him for the Darksaber.
One does wonder though if the reason. Okay, so here's a thought. So she says we're going to deal with this once and for all. Is that her saying that she's getting ready to go out there and challenge him for the Darksaber, and when he's not there, she has to go find him because she knows he has it?
Maybe, but I do think that, like, part of me thinks that she's sort of decided that she's not meant for the role.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that she's not and is not the future ruler of Mandalore, but I think at this point in time, she's decided that she is not the right person. She's given up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to see a resurgence of some. I think we're going to see a renewal of her faith in all things Mandalore here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree partially with that, Joker. I am kind of do we know that it was Mandalore the Great that rode the mythosaur? I've been trying to look that up. I've seen way too many people today claim that it was Tar Vizsla that rode the mythosaur, which is totally incorrect. And I know that Mandalore the Great was famous for the battles with the Jedi.
Mm,
So I actually think it's someone that predates Mandalore the Great that might have rode the mythosaur. It's
personally.
so far back that a lot of people don't believe the stories are even true.
Mhm.
Bo-Katan doesn't believe the stories about the mythosaur are true.
She's like, ooh, it was a mythosaur layer.
Yeah. No, she's totally making fun of it. She's sort of mocking the religious aspect of her
Hmm.
people. And so her idea at the end is it's so well, I can do this and then I can rule Mandalore. It might be that, or it might be that she has been doubting, and you see this look on her face when she's still mocking everything until Din Djarin starts walking into the water and reciting the creed.
Hmm.
And suddenly she shows reverence. Oh, that would be bad if the power on my monitor turned off while I was doing this.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that her seeing that is I think that seeing Din Djarin taking the oath
Hmm.
kind of starts to stir things in her, and then she sees the mythosaur, and
Hmm.
I think it has reawakened something in her, and it might be something far beyond a desire to rule,
Right.
because seeing it means something.
Right.
Um, the fact that the mythosaur is there means something.
Yeah, and I think Rose exactly right. I think that that's going to be. I think this is going to be her turning point moment. I think this is her going to be her conversion, for lack of a better word, away from, the
Yeah,
atheist, faithless life she's been living to looking for something, um, maybe looking for something a little more, a little, maybe trying to recapture the things that made Mandalore great in the first place instead of just trying to seize power for its own sake. Maybe, or maybe not. It'll be interesting to see where it's going.
right. But it's sort of trying to decide, like, when we have the two sides that he's caught between, being
Hmm.
um, Bo-Katan and the armor.
Yeah, and
I
actually, I
think
think this
at
is
this point, I think,
kind of what we talked about. It's like they both need to
yeah,
to come around a little bit. He needs to be a little less dogmatic, and she needs a little more of it.
yeah.
And so I think that's the most likely direction for this to go.
Well, I think there are several ways we could go here, and the mythosaur obviously represents something really, really important in the beginning of a new era of
Hmm.
Mandalore.
Yeah.
The fact that they're there to see it, but who is it? Her or him? It seems to indicate that one of them is meant to lead,
Right.
or is it that both of them there together are meant to lead?
Yeah. I think that'll be a really interesting question. I think, and I think they left it ambiguous for a reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think they want to answer this. When Favreau talks about, I know people have gotten really upset with him for saying they don't really have an ending, a set ending yet. Um, I don't believe for a second they don't have ideas of where they're headed.
Yeah, no, they just haven't
Um,
written the
but
finale
I don't think
already.
they're ready to. Yeah, they're not ready to write the last chapter yet,
Hmm.
which is fine.
Yeah.
Oh, Ro.
Yeah. So here's the question. Um,
Hey, yeah, hold on just a second before you go. Thank you for dropping in, Joker. Always glad to have you here,
yeah.
and yeah, Ro's here, and you never know what Ro might say. Right now, he's gonna complain about the child some more.
So I
That
do.
puppet is awesome, by the
That puppet
way.
is so pretty. It's just, it's and it bounces like a muppet. It walks
When it
like a
runs,
muppet. When it
when he kind of
runs,
does
it
the little run behind the
like
rock, it
a
looks like a
muppet.
muppet.
It's
Yeah.
so, like, that's my favorite thing about it, is that it runs like a muppet. Like, that whoever was doing that animation was like, and it's gonna run like it. Like, that's definitely intentional, that it looks like a muppet when it runs. Um, so here's the question though. Do Bo-Katan, I think that they both wind up ideologically a little more in the middle, but do they wind up meeting in the middle to unite, or they kind of wind up meeting in the middle to fight?
I think, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, they obviously can change their mind. I think Din Djarin and Bo Katan are gonna sit side by side on the throne of Mandalore before this is all said and done. I think that's where it's headed.
Yeah. Is she like his mother's age?
No.
No.
So they've sort of re-established how old she is. We were kind of led to believe before that she was, and this is from Favreau, who kind of fouled up his timeline the other day, and then he had to come back and clarify it a little bit. But that was on the 2-year deal. I have no problem with accepting that 2 years have passed since we started this show. Kind of has to for Navarro to have developed and all these other things to have happened. You have to have passage of time. But the they basically came back and said that she's like 20 years younger than her sister.
Okay. So she was probably like in her 20s whenever at the time of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, so you're looking at a character now that's like in her like late 40s.
Okay. It's been, and how long since the Clone Wars? So, I mean, she's still a lot older than him, but you know, not that that's not an option.
Possibly, we don't really know how old he is.
Yeah, except for he was adopted during the Clone Wars. So,
but if he was like 12 during the Clone Wars, then
That's
he's
true.
not that much younger than her.
That's true. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if that's what they're going for.
It may or may not be. I don't know. I mean, that's all speculation, and it really doesn't bother me either way. I think that, you know, we see things from her, like when she wields the dark saber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she actually does it right.
She not only does it right, she understands its power. I mean, that's what they keep saying over and over is like, you have to respect its power,
right,
to wield it.
I think that they intentionally showed him clonking it around, right, and doing it.
Yeah.
And then she shows
one we've seen a range of use, because we saw Paz Vizsla try to pick it up too, and he can barely pick it up.
Right.
Like he couldn't even swing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen a range of different people try to use it now, and we see her use it really well. I don't know. I mean, they could go a lot of places here. We could jump, we could jump well into the future, and we've already seen Grogu's connection with animals.
Mm-hmm.
It could be Grogu that tames the mythosaur.
Could be interesting.
At some point they're going to have to give us something like, is Grogu going to be a child forever? Like, how long are these beings? We don't know. We still don't know a species. So how long are they children?
Right. And do they sort of like mature?
And do they mature very, very slowly, or
some
is
kind of stasis?
Yeah, is there like a cocoon? Like there's a moment of,
what is it called? They go in the cocoon and they come out different.
I don't remember. Metamorphosis, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it could be something like that, where it's like you get a more immediate maturing of the character. I don't know. It may be that they intend for it to be the child through the whole series. I don't know. I don't know where they go with that. It's going to be so weird the first time it says real words.
Have you noticed though it's sounding a little more
Yes,
like real words?
it's and that might be the way to do it, is that it happens very slowly, because he's definitely more verbal, and there's more range to the verbal communication.
And also you have to kind of wonder if he actually has the capacity to speak and just hasn't, because he's clearly never had any like or not in a very long time had any kind of nurturing, right? There are kids who, after witnessing traumatic events don't speak for years or never again.
Yeah,
like that's a thing.
Well, Rose got to go back and edit some more. I have to do that later too. So
True.
Have a good night, Ro. We'll catch you later.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
So there is always that possibility that his some of the ways that he seems very, very childlike developmentally could just be trauma related and a lack of nurture and a lack of, I mean,
well, we don't know what happens to him for a good chunk of time there.
I mean, we last, when we first meet him, he's in the hands of bounty hunters.
Well, that's the thing, is everybody's like, who rescues him from the Jedi Temple? But we don't really know for sure if he's actually
who kidnaps him and sells him on the black market.
Right. Is he actually rescued?
Right.
Clearly the Empire is after him when we first find him. So yeah, we don't know what happens to him.
Yeah.
During that. So it's a fair stretch of time.
Because I was kind of thinking through, so like, how do they explain, like, he's 50 years old and he's
right, and we've got to explain away,
so
like,
how do we finally learn to talk in the course of 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be our best explanation, is he finally has someone to teach him.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with that character, and it's just really a matter of how far they want to go with that. With the character.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Because you have this puppet, but if you want to like grow the character up, you've got to create new stuff.
Make new puppets.
Yeah. Or decide if you're doing puppet or digital. You got a lot of things you got to hopefully. Puppet,
Puppets with
CGI Yoda could do things Puppet Yoda couldn't do. I do think they need a puppet. I think that it really
CGI
probably
Yoda
needs
was less cool than Puppet Yoda.
Okay.
CGI Yoda looked like he was CGI.
CGI Yoda got better as those movies went.
It was also 20 years ago, so.
Yeah.
Although
over 20 years
occasionally we see something and we're like, why do Lord of the Rings look better than this 20 years ago? You spent $70 million making this movie. Some questions just don't have answers, I guess.
So overall, I still think that the most interesting things about this show are the religious undertones. That's the most interesting part of the developing of the lore.
Waters.
Yeah.
That's one of the most identifiably Christian things that they say on this whole thing is, the living waters and the living waters and the living waters. That's something that they keep coming back to, which is it's not the holy waters or the sacred waters or the lots of things that they could have used to describe the waters. It's the living waters, which is, I think, telling.
Yeah.
That it's supposed to, if there were any doubts of the religious undertones of it, the fact that Jesus referred to himself as living water, and that's the phrase that they went for. I think it definitely really underscores the religious undertones for the series.
So who's the villain? Who's the villain right now?
I don't know. We don't really have a villain at the moment.
I mean, we kind of did away with Moff Gideon.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's really no reason we should see Moff Gideon back as the villain.
No.
Thrawn is going to be its own thing.
Yeah. I'm okay.
Is it the armorer? Ooh. And I think that's my question right now is, if I was to ask myself who is the villain, you have to say, is it Bo-Katan or is it the armorer?
Most likely one of the two.
Yeah. Well, you've got the two sides. You've got the dogmatic, and then the side that's given up.
And
the secular. And the leader of sort of the secular side just had a kind of an awakening moment. We have to see how she reacts to it.
Right.
Because we didn't see that.
Right.
Except that it freaked her out.
Yeah. $20 says the next episode is titled The Mythosaur.
It could be. I kind of doubt that. I think the Mythosaur is something we're going to revisit later. I don't think we're going to see the Mythosaur right away.
Oh, you don't think?
Mm-mm. Okay. I say that, but I was wrong. I didn't think we were going to go to the mines of Mandalore because we did this whole thing last week of like, we need IG-11 to go, and then we just go find another droid altogether. Now, I think what we did was set wheels in motion that eventually we're going to find the piece we need to fix IG-11. Um, I don't know how we're going to get that
like
piece.
we spent a good deal of time in that last episode trying to get IG-11 back to be like, never mind.
Yeah, and I think that was a very Filoni thing where eventually we're going to get IG-11 back, and it might not be this season, but
Yeah.
we got the character is like they're working on him.
Right. Yeah.
So how that plays out. They're
Mhm.
the only way he's getting that part is going to be to find a defunct IG droid or to kill an IG droid,
Right.
which could be just a fun fight because
Step on my toe.
I'm very sorry. IG droids are formidable.
Right. And there aren't many of them left.
Right.
So,
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that's headed. What?
that R5 unit is not a brave soul, is he?
No, which is like a total. It's like a character rewrite from Legends, because in Legends he was like, you know, he damaged his own motivator to make, because he knew R2 had to complete his mission and all this, and
he's got him as the anti R2 here,
yeah,
which is kind of fun.
It is,
and it's also interesting, and I think it says something. Like I think we see that Din Djarin is softening up a lot, because whenever the baby's going, worried about where the droid went, he's like, all right, I'll go get him. He doesn't like droids.
Yeah.
Like, and the sort of person who just, freezes their quarry and takes them back to whoever paid him is the sort of person that just cuts their losses whenever their droid they don't like disappears.
Yeah.
But he's got to go find it so the baby doesn't cry. Also, where's the pod? Where's it lurking? I don't see any place for that pod to fit.
The pod for the baby in the section between the droid socket and the cockpit.
Okay.
I mean, that's something that's always been there. I mean, like Luke's starfighter had room to store all kinds of crap, like the X-wing. So presumably the N1 does too. I mean,
that seems reasonable. I'll allow it.
Well, we know that there's a tunnel in the between, because the baby's crawling back and forth between. So speaking of last week, I rewatched last week's episode too. One of my favorite things that I didn't talk about last week because I didn't take notes, it's just a funny, silly moment, is when they get in the fight with the pirates. There's no seatbelts, right? And the baby climbs between Din and the bandolier like a seatbelt.
That's great. That's
funny. But I love this episode. Like, the mythosaur looks absolutely stunning. The religious notes are all on point. I'm ready to see where they go. They're definitely making very, very pointedly strong comparisons to Israel and in exile. Yeah.
We'll see if the Mandalorians fall into the cycle of apostasy.
Well, I think that's what they've been in for a really long time.
Yeah.
Is that we've basically got warring groups of apostates.
Yeah.
Or apostates and a cult.
Yeah. Who all think that they're the one true. It seems like it may be a little bit of an indictment on organized religion.
I mean, obviously you've got somebody, I don't know if it's Favreau or Filoni. I suspect it's Filoni that sort of understands organized, has some understanding of organized religion.
I mean, the thing is, large religions is what large religions do. You see groups of Christians, through history fighting each other. You see groups of Muslims, to this day, the Sunnis and the, different sects of the same, purportedly the same faith, who, kill each other en masse. Catholics and Protestants have a long history of it. So, it's not always them. Sometimes them is the people who claim to believe the same thing as you.
Right.
So it's definitely an interesting commentary. I'll be really curious to see what kind of direction it goes.
Yeah.
And my third's about done. So
okay. So did you have any last thoughts on any of that with the conversation between? I found the most compelling thing we've had on a Star Wars show in a while, outside of some of the speeches in Andor, which are like next level. But lore wise, are these conversations between Din and one of the things that was really interesting, because Din's still not sure about Bo-Katan, and he's still kind of looking at her as an apostate. Like he's still kind of looking down his nose at her, but she talks about her father and that her father was a great man,
right, that
died fighting to protect Mandalore, and he stops, and has this moment and says, "This is the way." That's him acknowledging, that's him acknowledging something very, very specific about her and her family.
Right. Well, he's basically giving them, and now they have attained legitimacy in his mind.
Yeah.
Because the armorer says she claimed it by right of blood, only by right of blood and by right of wielding that blade. And so, he's acknowledging that, to give your life for Mandalore is the way, which is significant, I think, especially coming from him to her.
Yeah. So, very cool episode. I can't wait to see where the story's going, but yeah, we'll wrap up there before people start losing their voice.
Good plan. It would be much less interesting if I didn't have anything to say.
All right, guys. Well, let us know what you thought about chapter 18 of The Mandalorian. And if you liked it, or if you didn't, or what you did or didn't. And we'll be back to talk about it again next week. And I probably will start doing a short, quick reaction, non-spoilery type reaction to it. But yeah, I mean, staying up till 3:00 to do it. So when I do that, Nick shows up, and Nick's the only one still up that late. So, yeah. But that's nice. So
yeah, he's your night owl friend from the
West Coast.
The West Coast.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Coruscant Radio Underground. You can always catch us here on YouTube as part of the Science Fictionary. And you can find the Coruscant Radio Underground podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if you want to drop us a line, find us at crew_podcast, at CRU_podcast on Twitter, or drop us a line at the sciencefictionary@gmail.com. Marisha, did you have anything?
No.
You don't exist online?
I don't. Not really. Maybe someday I will again, but not today.
All right, guys. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.